Hello there, my friends, and welcome back to the Brightworks. Today, we got a little bit of an AFK commander as we start our match today on a brand new map. I've actually played this map a couple of times, and let me tell you, it's a fun one. It's a really fun one. Reminiscent of Rosetta Stone, I believe is the name of that other map that has the 10 metal per second spot. This one also has a 10 metal extractor that you can put a mechs down on. If you're spawning in the center of this map here, as we can see, the lines of war have been drawn out here very handily by our blue team leader, spawning not as Armada commander, but rather as a Legion commander here. So yes, indeed, there's a whole lot of new units that have been enabled here. We've got the candidate units, the release candidate units, that is. We have Legion units, and I'm not sure if we have the air rework. Let me check. Okay, I don't think we have the air rework on this one. You know, there's so many experimental settings that are now available to the public here. And I love it. I do love every single one of them. It's so fun to play around with different variations of the game. But yeah, it can be a little bit tricky to keep track of here. So, representing the blue team as a Legion commander, it's going to be juicy. And already has that 10 metal per second metal extractor up and running. Has another one in the back line here. But yeah, this 10 metal per second is going to be tremendous for the blue commander. And that's why I think it's a lovely idea to go into a vehicle bay here. Now, I've covered a lot of Legion recently here. We played with Legion on the stream a whole lot. Legion's a pretty interesting one. They have a whole lot of really heavy-hitting units, but they don't have a whole lot of durability, so they're sort of all glass cannons, which is pretty interesting. It does make for a little bit of an interesting mirror matchup, very Zerg-like in that way, to draw a comparison to StarCraft 2 if you're familiar with that game. But in other words, it's basically just very, very explosive. And it makes for an interesting battle, but oftentimes that snowballing effect can be tremendous. Now, representing the red team as a default as a default Cortex commander, wearing, however, a lovely little red nose and some earmuffs with some antlers. It's going to be Rudolph the Red-Nosed Random Variable, representing the red team, going into a little bit of a vehicle bay here on the northern side for the red team. So, King's Assault. Why do I love this map so much? Well, one of the reasons is that we have so much metal out here in the middle. 2.5 metal extractors, and there's 5 metal extractors total for both teams here. It's a mirrored match, so the no man's land in the middle here is going to be essentially worthless, and all of the metal extractors should be well behind where the front lines you would imagine would be set up here. Now, obviously, denying that metal on your opponent is going to be a killer strategy here because, well, getting these metal extractors up and running is going to provide a tremendous benefit to whichsoever person should be able to claim them. There's also a lot of those energy rocks, so those are often something that we see used as a little bit of a leveraging point to get into, for instance, geothermals here. There's a couple of geothermal vents over on the sort of northern section of the map, a little bit of a run by right now. Random variable, sending a couple of these rascals on through. There are some units here for our blue commanders, both Slayer 40 and Gustavo, both of which going to clean up those rascals nicely there. Very nicely done. Meanwhile, Noodle Cup has sent a rover on through. There's an LLT over here. It is spotted, so that's nicely done. Microing that rover on out of there so that it doesn't get run over and lasered down to pieces here. It will find Kabul's commander, though, and I don't think it's being microed. Kabul carrying around that sack of presence and a laser beam directly to the face will end that scouting aggression. Not managing to snipe a metal extractor, but that's okay. At the very least, getting a nice little view of what's going on across on the other side of the map. Now, if you're curious, I know some people often are, this was a match that was submitted on the Brightworks Discord channel. You, of course, are more than welcome to go join up over there. You can check out the links down below in the description section where you'll find a link to the Discord, and you're more than welcome to join up. Always happy to have new members in there, and if you'd like to see one of your own replays submitted and, well, potentially checked out. I don't get a chance to look at all of them. It used to be that I could pretty much look at every single replay, but nowadays, yeah, it's a little bit of a suffering from success sort of a situation. But I do try to come through there as often as possible, so good odds that you'll see your game come up and featured on the channel here if you'd like to have me take a look at it. The Helios, what a cool tank. It fires a little heat ray beam. For a while we were actually, it was rumored that we were going to see a little bit of a change in the Cortex meta where they were essentially going to receive something like a heat ray tank like that. It was in the works and it never ended up being implemented, but it was a cool idea. I think Legion has effectively been given the go-ahead on that command, and instead are going to be the ones owning the heat ray tanks. I always feel like Legion needs a little bit more differentiation. Right now, they're sort of a mishmash between Cortex and Armada. Much more Cortex than Armada, though, I will say. D-gun? D-gun? Oh, okay. Gonna go for the laser tower instead here on the front line. Not the end of the world. I think, personally, I would love to see the Legion turn into, like, a plasma-based sort of composition. Right now, they fire napalm, but it'd be real easy to retexture that into plasma. I feel like napalm should belong to Cortex since their whole thing is fire. Nice push right here by Noodle Cup. As I, you know, neglect the game here. An excellent push by Noodle Cup up here, claiming this 2.5 metal extractor, and yeah, pushing pretty far back right now. Faxlaz has not got enough units out on the field, at least for the time being. We've got some medium tanks up now, so those will be durable enough to contribute on the front lines, but you gotta be careful. Yeah, you don't want to lose them. Once they're bundled up in a ball, they can be really difficult to bring down in mass. What is this little... Oh, they're dropping little presents. Little Christmas ornaments. They're dropping little, yeah, little Christmas tree decorations. That's just adorable. Let's see if we can see one there. Yep, there they are. Christmas is here. Hope everybody's having a happy holidays. Wherever and whenever you are in the world. Hope you're having a good one. Gustavo in a little bit of trouble here. Medium tanks starting to apply a little bit of a pressure. We've got some blitzes incorporated here as well. Excellent for scouting, of course, but also just a little bit of cursory firepower. And Gustavo's commander looking a little bit hurt. Pawns, well, I guess they're going to take a pretty effective trade. Yeah, you know what? These pawns did manage to take a really decent trade against that medium tank and traded out one pawn for one medium tank. That's a trade that I'm sure Gustavo is happy to make here, but I think he'd be a lot happier reclaiming all this metal right now and forging it into an army. Random Variable doing an excellent job of moving a whole lot of units slowly but steadily forward. We have a Pounder, the Riot tank here. Excellent for crowd control, and it's, well, basically perfect for pushing this sort of a situation here where you're going up against a Legion commander, because Legion is very, very heavily invested in sort of spammy, kind of all over the place sorts of units. Down on the southern line, looks like Juniper and Friends ready to set up her fortifications here. We're going to be going for a Dragon's Maw. Extremely resilient static defense, so I do like to see it. It's going to be very valuable for keeping these medium tanks at bay as well, especially because these tanks tend to group up, right? So there's Dragon's Maw and Dragon's Claw, both very capable of dealing with those tanks here. Pounder actually doing a decent amount of damage right now. The splash on that actually doing a decent number on a lot of these tanks. Didn't kill any of them, but it does scratch a whole lot of them up. Little bit of micro right there, and we could see these repaired by maybe this constructor. Or if this constructor sets up a construction turret, that'd be pretty nice as well. Beamer turret up here, going to be trying to hold the line, as it were. Doing its very best, but it will not be enough, as the medium tanks, those brutes, are just too strong. They're going to sweep on through here, cleaning out the defenses, allowing Checkbox to continue marching forward. Checkbox using the the exploiters here, the armed metal extractors for Cortex, in order to very slowly but steadily march forward at a pace. This is becoming a problem right now. Okay, so Avenger K decided to go for a T2 lab. A little bit early on the T2 lab, especially without sacrificing the commander right there, and excellent move by Juniper and Friends to realize that her lane of attack is now wide open over here. Sends a bunch of these medium tanks up through the northern section. I think is exactly the right idea. One thing that I'd love to see is a little bit of a splitties here, maybe sending some of these down to the low ground here and trying to distribute some of the damage into the back line. But still, having these medium tanks pumping out damage per second is going to be wonderful. Also, the damage tanks in the back going to be great because they'll be able to continue firing, right? The only HP that matters is the last one. Medium tanks now rolling on in. Avenger Kate does not have the T2 units out. He's almost got a single hound. He's going to need to use that, that commander to D-gun. Oh, excellent D-guns right there. Does manage to, there we go. There we go. Second D-gun does connect, and that's going to be all the medium tanks going down right there. Unfortunate to see, but at the very least, they did take out a whole bunch of these metal extractors. Going to be slowing down Avenger K just a little bit. But yeah, these advanced solar panels, I'd love to see them, but we have to trade out those T1s for them. Otherwise, it's just going to cost too much metal. My goodness, Juicy. Claiming the entire middle of the map right here. He is a Legion commander, which does mean, he or she, actually, I don't know. They. Legion commander here, which means that, they don't have the metal extractors that are, or rather their metal extractors are less efficient, right? That's one of the trade-offs for Legion, is that their default metal extractors, or T1 metal extractors, are, well, they have two versions. They have one that extracts slightly slower but produces a little bit of energy, and they have one that consumes a tremendous amount of energy but also produces, I believe it's 1.5 times as much metal. It's pretty good, and there's definitely some nuance to that. Like, there's got to be some interesting build orders where you end up upgrading this, right? Especially on this one, where you could get 15 metal per second instead of just 10. I feel like that would definitely be well worth it. But it's very tricky because you end up building a tremendous energy economy, and then eventually your energy economy recovers as you go into T2, and they're way more efficient for the same energy cost. It's pretty weird, and I would love to see some analysis on it. although that might be asking for a little too much. These Belchers here, oh no, sorry, these are barrages. Belchers, I believe, are the T2 napalm bots, which are very difficult to deal with, but these barrages are a napalm artillery, very powerful and excellent for laying siege over here. I'd love to see them firing into this crowd of T1 units that are very, very slow moving. It's a lot of Rocketeers and a lot of Maces. A couple of pawns mixed in there, so maybe we might lose a barrage, might be what Juicy is a little bit wary of, but I think just holding this line is going to be well worth it. For the time being, pumping out a lot of T1 units, but I think it's time we... Ooh, okay. Was that a commander going down? Looks like it. Oh, must have been a sacrifice. Okay, I see. I was a little confused right there. Looks like we are seeing a sacrifice from Mufkin Conan, our Canadian player up on the northern section. A little bit of another run by up here. Yeah, nicely done by Juniper and friends. Continuing to maneuver her tanks inwards and, yeah, into the backline serve of Venture K. Gotta be so annoying for our Seafoam Green player to be dealing with that right now. Gotta upgrade one thing at a time here. I think pumping out the T1 Maces, which are very metal dense, as well as the Centurions, as well as producing another T2 lab. It's just too much metal production, and we really need to focus up on the metal extractors that we have at hand. After all, upgrading these metal extractors is gonna put them at 10 metal per second, and you have 3 of them, so... By my quick and rapid onset calculations, that would be about 30 metal per second just by holding the metal extractors in your base. It's going to be well worth, yeah, using that to pump out a whole bunch of units here. Juniper and friends could definitely go for her T2 lab at this point. I think it's right about time that we start thinking about that. There's a construction turret eating up a whole bunch of T1 solar panels, so that's excellent. We do have the constructors here. Maybe a little build power wouldn't be the end of the world either. We'll finish up that solar, please. Oh no, advanced solar panel gets pulled back. Oh, there we go. Okay, she noticed. Always a bummer to lose one of your units to, yeah, accidentally miscuing a constructor there. Medium tank getting blasted out by a bunch of Banshees. It's a little bit of a thing that we don't see all too often. But yeah, those T1 gunships, T1 Armada gunships, can definitely be worth it if you manage to get a decent trade like that. Slayer 40. Trying desperately to hold the line here. These Legion commanders actually fall off pretty heavily as we head into the mid-game here. Yeah, some of those mid-game units, whoa, massive commander trade right here. A bunch of the army goes down as well. The red team pushing back severely across the middle of the map right now. Legion commanders tend to fall off in the mid-game because those units are just durable enough to withstand the barrage from those Legion commanders, and the Legion commanders lose their riot cannon as they scale up, which I think is probably something that might need to be tweaked, right? I feel like as we go into the mid-game, the riot cannon should stay and improve. Either way, though, the medium tank's now rolling through for Sweaty Fish. Gonna find the, well, inactive geothermal over here. Bit of a blunder right there for the blue player to not go for that geothermal. I think that's definitely a valuable use of metal, would be to put that into, yeah, building 300 energy per second. It's very, very efficient. I believe it's 500-ish metal per second. Or total, rather. Cacophony's over here, by the way, blasting apart some of these medium tanks alongside the Banshees, and those will all be cleaned up quite nicely. Not too much damage was done right there to the blue player. Yeah, Juicy actually doesn't have a tremendous economy on the backside of this. He has a lot of T1 solar panels and 1 advanced solar panel, but he really needs to desperately start up some sort of economic basis here. He has the advanced metal extractor on the 10x spot, means he's getting 40 metal per second, which is well worth enough to go into a proper T2 lab, T2 production, T2 energy, T2 basically everything right now. You can see these T2 units trading out effectively against all of the forces here that have been sacrificed from Juniper and friends, as well as, well, basically everyone who's been contributing tanks up there. Checkbox decides to pork. Always a little bit of an unconfident maneuver. Always feels like something that we see when newer players start up is going for that, and that's hardly to their fault. That's oftentimes what the scenarios train you to do, is to pork up as hard as you can and defend your heart out, and then eventually, yeah, try your very best to withstand the barrage. Really what you want to do is be as aggressive as possible so that you can use the metal you get from reclaiming your enemy's dead bodies, chew them up, and spit them out into new fangled units. We've got some T2 production up and running, by the way. I missed the transition, but it was well due there as Juniper and friends decides to put down their T2 lab, pumping out some of those T2 units here. We do have the test candidate units enabled, so real quickly, one of them is the Salamander. We also have the Printer, which is very, very cool. I do notice that Juniper is going for a Tsar, so that's a really cool move. An early Tsar can devastate T1 units, especially big clusters of medium tanks like this. Tsars shut it down lickety-split. And it's exactly what Juniper and friends is desperately in need of right now. Killer D-Gun cuts across the green tank line, though, sundering that tank line in half. And that's going to be a tremendous relief, as the T2 units are going to have to clean up the rest of these tanks. Commander just going to be a little too slow to deal with this, I do believe, as long as those tanks keep moving anyways. Yeah, this is a problem. Juniper and friends calling for reinforcements right now. We have a T2 transition right now from Checkbox, despite receiving a T2 constructor already. As a point of note, in case there's any folks looking for a learning opportunity out there, typically if you receive a T2 constructor, it's better to keep your T1 lab up and running and producing and just go into the T2 economy while you're producing out of the T1 lab. Basically what that results in is you end up with 4 times the amount of T1 units, which allows you to regain control of your line if you lost it, or push your line forward while getting your T2 economy up and running. And then it's very easy using the metal from that advantage in order to build back into the game, get yourself into T2, and things tend to spiral into your favor at that point. Still a lot of medium tanks up on this northern side. We do see T2 tanks finally coming out for the red player who's gone for a T2 transition. Almost feels a little late with how big of an advantage that Random Variable has had here on the northern side, claiming so many of these metal extractors, and I feel like a lot of that could have come up a little bit sooner here, but maybe just trying to be extra cautious, making sure that no metal is wasted, no expense is spared on keeping the front line secured. Oftentimes you can use the front line like the barrier or your buffer zone, maybe a better word, for transitioning into T2. You can set up that T2 line a whole lot easier once your T1 line has been established, and then as it crumbles slowly backwards, your T2 starts to come out to catch it. Tsar is finally up and available, and what I'd love to see is a couple of these printers. A lot of people aren't very familiar with the printer because it's a candidate unit and it's a little bit niche, but basically the way it works is that it can repair and reclaim while moving. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is, because what it means is that, say for instance you had a Tsar out on the field, you could slap a couple of these printers right behind it and this Tsar is invincible. Nothing is going to be able to shut it down because, the Tsar is going to be constantly being repaired, not to mention all of the units that the Tsar manages to annihilate, like for instance tons and tons of hounds right here for Avenger K. Yeah, all that metal, all that juicy reclaim gonna go directly back to your units because your printers are gonna patch up your Tsar, finish up doing that, and transition into reclaiming everything off the front lines. It's an extremely powerful unit, and one that, frankly, I feel like we don't see utilized quite as often as I feel like we should. Mammoth's another very powerful option for going into that. Mammoths can basically counter T3 if you slap a bunch of printers behind them because they're so durable and they're practically invincible once you slap those printers, constantly repairing the Mammoths up. Not even Razorbacks really can break through them. They're a force to be reckoned with, surely. I swear, yeah, there we are. We have a Quaker, T2 artillery. Fires a heavy projectile out into the distance. Oh, EMP bomber comes across the front of Random Variable and Sweaty Fish's forces right there. Very nice paralyzation right there. Paralysis from the skies, trying to shut down a whole lot of this. Yeah, we're going back in for a second run. I think it's probably a good idea. Missile trucks will eventually shoot that out of the sky, as well as some of those T1 Legion fighters. That's quite funny. We don't see those all too often. They're a little bit bad when the air rework is in place, but I don't think we have the air rework. Yeah. We definitely don't have the air rework. So, for the time being, those Legion fighters are going to be okay. They're still not great, especially the T1 fighters, but they're going to be okay. The problem is that they don't have any sort of tracking on their bullets, so their projectiles don't curve in any direction. They have to fire essentially like a machine gun, which means that they have to line up very, very nicely against whatever enemy they're going to be fighting, and oftentimes the fighter battles just don't work out that way. You need some sort of correction, some sort of course correction in order to make that work, and yeah, they kind of struggle as they get into those higher-end T2 fights. Tsar still putting in a tremendous amount of work over here. Dragon's Maw also spitting out a gout of flame, cutting down these medium tanks right now. Heavy tanks inevitably going to ruin this fortification, but that's okay. Heavy tanks going to be much more potent as far as fortification go than any amount of T1 walls will be. It's a very far forward T2 lab. Yeah, it looks like Noodle Cup has realized that and is going to start reclaiming over here. We've got a second T2 lab built a little bit further back. It's a bit of an interesting decision. I'd love to see maybe that lab turned into a little bit of economy back here. Could be well worth it. Not a lot of build power for the green player, Noodle Cup there. Full-blown tech transition right now as we've gone into we've gone out of T1 we've gone into T2 vehicles here in the middle of the map, and then we've gone into bots there. It's a pretty interesting little transition all across the way, all across multiple facades there. But could be worth it. Those bots obviously very good for repairing here. Sharpshooters are now out, but there's only one of them. You gotta build those up in significant number before sending them out to the field. I think I showed a video a little while back, a couple days back, where I showcased the sharpshooters and my opinion on the proper way to play them, where you build up about 10 of them in the backline, and as your enemy starts to overwhelm you with medium tanks, you start to roll them forward slowly but surely, covered by welders, and there's not a whole lot that can beat that. The welders will basically shut down anything that is light and cheap and trying to defuse the sharpshooters, and then the sharpshooters just go ahead and continue marching forward. You have to also make sure to include the radar bot and the jammer bot, of course, making sure to deny your enemy any chance of barraging you with long-range artillery. But if you can manage to micro all of that, then you're going to be in a really healthy spot. Spybot is seen. I'm going to paralyze the commanders here. Oh no, Spybot is located right there and will be blasted apart by the laser beams of the commanders here for Checkbox and Juniper and friends. Oh, I see. So Checkbox is just... Checkbox has just anchored the commander to Juniper and friends right here. That's quite funny. That's, yeah, I mean, I guess that's a very low APM way of solving that issue. Not the end of the world, certainly. Not bad. So, yeah, you know, I'd rather have the commander helping on the front line than just idling in the back, I suppose. Big old explosion as Kabul's commander goes down over here. Starting to roll out some sharpshooters as well. Sharpshooters just downright oppressive on the front lines. Once they start firing effectively, they really can't be stopped. Got to spread them out. You've got to make sure that you have enough of them to start chaining their shots together so they can burst down even some of the tankier stuff. Oh, and you really want some of those pinpointers to make your radar vision a little more accurate. Boy, missing commander explosions all over the place. Big old fight in the northern section. Looks like pressure has not been relieved from random variable side. You see some flak trucks included here trying to shoot down some of those T2 fighters, though. A little tougher, though, taking 2 shots apiece to kill. It really burns, though. It looks like Slayer 40's commander went up in smoke right inside the main base, meaning that everything is gone for the Cyan commander. It's going to mean that the northern section is really a lot of pressure relieved right now, as for the red team, that is. As Gustavo, as well as Viridian Pulsar, going to be the only 2 fighting this northern lane over here, as opposed to the 3 powerhouses that we have on the northern section for the red team. A couple of quick bursts, quick shots? Quick shots, there we go. They're extremely powerful. I hope we get to see them collide with something a little bit sturdy here. Not gonna happen, but there you go. You can see the damage output is tremendous on these bad boys. Oh, no, Bull's also quite tremendous. My goodness, that Bull just shot those down wonderfully. But yeah, quick shot's very, very capable as far as a raiding unit goes. They're extremely, extremely potent. They can oftentimes melt through even the sturdiest of defenses and other base fortifications or structures very quickly. They're an extremely dangerous unit. You cannot let them slip by. If they've made it through to your base, they're going to tear it apart in an instant. Frontline being pushed back by the sharpshooter reinforcements here from Avenger K. I do want to note that we have a rattlesnake over here, which has actually been providing a lot of firepower, so that's quite nice. Yeah, helping Gustavo hold the line. That's always lovely to see. The barrage. The napalm artillery starts firing away, melting a lot of those units that are just standing inside of it. Oh, so many sharpshooters go down right there. That thing is so hilarious to see work. The Inferno, that's what it's called. Inferno, you can see it's a rapid-fire Gatling artillery sort of style of unit, and it can fire a long-range, wide burst of napalm in every direction. It is devastating. A field of fire, if you will. Very effective at clearing out fortifications. It's definitely meant as a sort of a parallel to the, I guess you would say, the, oh, what is that one called? The Cortex, not Apocalypse. Why do I want to say Apocalypse? Oh gosh, what is it called? The Tremor. Boy, I'm really slipping up here, huh? Anti-nuke has been built up here. Somewhere. Where is the anti-nuke? Oh, there it is. Yeah, there's an anti-nuke that's been parked over here, so that's quite nice. At the very least, none of these frontline units are going to get nuked apart. You know, strangely enough, it doesn't feel like we have all too much economy coming up. We're 23 minutes into this game, and I don't see any aphises. We do have one coming up here for Cezio? Go with Cezio. We have, do we have any aphises over here? No, still fusion reactors. Yeah, no tremendous economy from anybody on either team right now, which is pretty interesting. It does mean that we're going to be into a very late game here. Oh, okay. We're going into a gantry right now for Slayer 40. That's ambitious. For the player without a base, that's ambitious. It was handed a constructor after all, so it's nice that we at the very least have that option. But yeah, I'm not sure if that, that gantry's going to come up anytime soon over here. Juniper and friends ready to set up her fortified zone. Going to put up a whole bunch of static defense. No radar jammers in this mix, so these units are going to fall prone to the forces embedded in the trenches over here. Just have a Scorpion turret popping up and firing away here. Gonna melt away a whole lot of these units. Extremely difficult to deal with a fortification like this if you don't have the proper tools for it, and these certainly are not. You need something like the Tremor, you need something like Quakers, you need long-ranged and heavy hitting in order to deal with this sort of a thing, and just isn't available for the green players right now. Yeah, X-Mick, not even on T2 yet. Definitely late for the T2 transition, relying heavily on that wind power, but you can see it dips down to 4, and then things rapidly run out of power here. I'm not sure if resurrecting is the right idea. I think reclaiming that to get an emergency boost of metal might be the best maneuver right there. A couple of cheeky bolts sneaking through here from Sweaty Fish, very nicely done. Hopefully going to be ravaging the economy over here. Obviously this 10 metal per second metal extractor, well I guess it's 40 metal per second with a T2 on it. Very obvious target for things that would be considered valuable to go for over here. Gustavo moving pretty far forward with the commander. That's a pretty risky step right there. Yeah, those Quaker do not mess around, especially after they got their little change. Not quite sure if it's a buff or a nerf. I think it's probably a buff. They hit a little harder and they fire a little slower, but they also have a little more AoE to them. I think it is more in line with the Cortex motto, the Cortex way of doing things, and for that reason, I guess I would say it's probably a buff. Yeah, Bulls shutting all this down. Those Quakers also pushing in. Granted vision by those Bulls that are now lingering in the base of Gustavo, going to mean that the northern side is now crumbling rapidly here. We also have a counterattack over here. Again, Bulls pushing far forward, showcasing their strength expertly here in this match. Bunch of these green Bulls from Noodle Cup going to be ravaging any of the reinforcements here. They're catching these units in fights that are one by one, and that's exactly what we're looking for here as far as effective trades go anyways. Oh, Advanced Geothermal just finishes up, but it might come back to haunt these players over here, is that AGEO is now a beautiful target for a lot of these tanks. Plenty of health in these Bulls, though. This is an emergency crisis. It's going to need some sort of rapid response in order to deal with this. Looks like we already have Tigers being diverted from the front lines over here. We have Quakers still marching on these fronts over here, trying to melt away any of these units. That's quite nice. Keep up that continuous pressure. Right? Northern side is looking quite dangerous, though. You know what? Those rattlesnakes did just make light work of all of those Quakers, though. That's quite nice. EMP Bomber doing the absolute most to try and keep all of this alive. It's a band-aid on a open and bleeding wound here. Is it going to be enough? Well, you know, enough EMP bombers and anything is possible. Rattlesnakes slowly chipping away at those tanks. Man, it does not do much against those heavy tanks, though. Their armor is just too thick. Quakers now left without their armored core to protect them here. I know saying armored core is going to bring a whole host of folks to the comment section. I've never really been a huge Armored Core fan. I've respected those games from afar. Cool in theory, but just not my type of game. Too many details to get interested in, which I know is a ridiculous thing to say after spending so much time enjoying learning all the different unit names in BAR, right? I don't know. Couldn't get into it, not the same way that I do for RTS games at the very least. Heavy tanks gonna slow down the medium tanks here that we're pushing in for our green player, but eventually the reinforcements for Adventure K gonna clean all that up. Still Persecutor, pop-up plasma turret for the Cortex faction. Going to be doing some excellent work, keeping all that nice and comfortable. Welders are the one we want. There we go. We have a welder marching up to the front lines here. Yeah, Welder's much more qualified to deal with tick spams than well, basically anything else. At this point, medium tanks have just broken all the way through though, and this is a nightmare. Our air player doing the very best over here. Mufkin Conan trying the very least to try and get something done. Yeah, one nuclear bomber is going to take forever to clear all these tanks up. It's better than nothing, but it is, it's going to take a while. Flak truck will shoot it down. It's an excellent kill from that flak truck. Very well worth it. At this point, Juniper and friends still pushing the static defense. I wonder if that's a little bit of an incorrect move here. I think, well, first of all, I'd love to see maybe a construction turret up here to just reclaim from the front lines. Feels like a weird move, but you got to remember construction turrets are only 210 metal for the 11,000 that's around here, and they reclaim extremely quickly. That's basically all they do. it's a, yeah, it can actually end up being a very effective trade to just throw up a construction turret real quick. It takes about, oh, I don't know, 20 seconds or so with a couple of T1 construction vehicles. This tank has been EMP'd for an eternity here. Still granting vision of this backline, though. Blue player has already been ravaged, trying to rebuild here. It's going to take forever, though. Building that build power back up, it's a monumental, a Herculean feat. Oftentimes very, very difficult to do. The Tiger tanks are going to do it. A couple of banishers wouldn't be the end of the world here either, just to provide some big spikes of damage, take out a couple of tanks in one big burst. Not going to matter, though. These heavy tanks are more than qualified enough to deal with all of this T1 waste, essentially. XMech is finally on T2, but definitely way behind the curve right now. And yeah, this is going to be, unless the EMP bombers can come to the rescue, this is going to be one dead green base. You know what? Heavy laser turrets doing the most. Always funny to see those heavy laser turrets. I feel like they're extremely underwhelming. Oftentimes I feel like those, oh, nice D-gun right there by XMech's commander. Didn't see him back there, but that commander is going to clean up a lot of those heavy tanks. Okay, a decent hold right there. Barely didn't take a catastrophic hit to the wind turbines, but it will mean that XMech perseveres for one more instant, even if it may be the last. Anti-air trucks trying to shoot down these gunships. I believe gunships were buffed regardless of the air rework. I think they just received an overall tune that made them quite a bit tankier, which is great. That was absolutely one of their killer weaknesses, was they were just paper thin, and there was not really anything that you could do about them. And it looks like they're quite a bit sturdier now, yeah. Makes them a whole lot better in engagements like this. The EMP bomber are going to come across the face of that as well, make those gunships even more effective. Anti-air over here, though, tearing apart that air wall. Oh, this is wonderful. Yeah, that's really nice. Oftentimes something that you forget about it when you're pushing on the front lines, but if you can manage to get some anti-air underneath the enemy's air wall, you can severely thin out their air forces, making your air players push so much easier in the back line. You can see the air force is basically cut in half here. Almost nothing left for the purple players. All of that has been melted away by the anti-air trucks now pumped out by Checkbox. Excellently done on that southern line, holding against the darkness. T2 fighters are pulled right now. Lost Hope sends them in, trying to snipe whatever they can. And doing a pretty good job of it. Yep, there they go. Easily winning the air trade here after all the fighters were removed from the air wall here. We also have a whole bunch of mine layer bombers. Those are a Legion specialty. You have these mine layer bombers that drop a bunch of those light mines all over the place. Pretty hilarious, but it can also ruin your energy economy if you're not extremely careful about it, so you do have to be. Sharpshooter and Fat Boy in tandem here, making a march, or trying to at the very least. But it looks like under all that pressure and with basically the entire middle of the map wiped out here, the blue team will decide to throw in the towel. The red team persevering today with an excellent push across the northern side, a wonderful hold on the southern side, sort of a slow and encroaching creep on the southern lane down there. But a wonderful, wonderful push right here through the middle of the map. Love to see these matches that are including more and more Legion, more and more of the test units, more and more of the candidate stuff. I feel like as people get more and more comfortable with them, it's going to mean that they're going to get closer and closer to production, which is always fun to see. Love new features that get pushed out to the game. It's always one of the things that keeps things interesting. Sure hope you enjoyed today's cast. Let me know what you think about Legion and the candidate units and all that stuff in the comment section down below, as always, and I will see you in the very next Beyond All Reason video. Peace out, folks.